Thank you, Marcel. All right. Hello, everyone. So Marcel already introduced YC. I'm not going to do that again. Just showing, yes, I was a founder at YC, did the Winter 14 batch over 10 years ago now. In 2020, I hired a successor at Algolia, and shortly after, I joined YC as a partner. I've been so fortunate after joining YC to be really at the forefront seat so that I could witness that AI revolution. Really, everything started with the release of ChatGPT, and we're end of 2022. The Winter 23 batch was our first batch post ChatGPT, started just a month later. Well, by the end of the batch, about half the companies were AI startups or had become AI startups. Kind of half of them. Pretty incredible how fast it got in the mind of people. To be clear, at that time, we were still seeing people exploring what AI could mean. And that's why we saw a lot of very simple GPT wrappers, like AI SDR, helping people to copyright their emails. Well, most of them are not with us anymore. Many of them have pivoted away from that. Of course, only a few of them ended up being successful. Another surprising thing that happened back then in that batch was enterprises. We saw many enterprises being extremely excited with AI. That was surprising. The negative here is that the best way for them to educate themselves was to leverage startups. And so many of them became customers of these startups just to churn a few months later once they had learned enough. Well, it's not the first technology shift that led to many new startups. You, of course, know about Internet, the cloud, and others. But this one, I believe, has been much bigger already in just 2 years. Everything moved way faster. So fast forward to the last batch. We are the fall 24 batch that ended up in December. By then, 80% of the companies were AI startups. And the other 20% were all leveraging AI in their daily job. I have too many stats on that slide, but very quickly, 80% of these ended up building AI applications, and 20% were building the tools that were used by people to develop AI. Text, of course, was a big thing. Surprisingly, 22% of them were working with voice. And I'm going to tell you more about that later. Majority is B2B, but we're starting to see more and more consumer AI startups. AI is leveling the playing field here, enabling new startups to be built in that space. And while we fund companies all over the world, from all over the world, 75% of them decided to stay in SF, in San Francisco, at the end of the batch, making San Francisco even more than before the place to be if you are building in AI. All right, let me tell you quickly how I categorize these startups. I could put them in 4 different layers, from the hardware at the bottom to models, dev tools, and applications. And on the right there, I showed the required investment for a new startup to be competitive. It's obviously very difficult for them to be competitive in hardware and very much more accessible in applications. That's why we see most of them building application startups or dev tools. Let's go quickly one by one. The hardware layer, the required investment make it simply impossible for them to compete with NVIDIA. So none of them try. What we see companies do here, a few of them, is more building software for chip designers or working on new types of architectures like quantum computing. One layer above is models. Well, obviously, it's very difficult to compete with OpenAI and other well-funded labs, but you don't require as many resources to build a specialized model. And we've seen that happen again and again, like in healthcare with Diffuse Bio, but also we see here voice, images, videos with other companies. So that's also a space where we see a few good players. And After that, we have the dev tool layers, the infra and dev tool layers. That's where we start to see a lot more startups, from things like fine-tuning with Unsloth to whatever, CodeGen with Continue Replit, app builders, and so on. Couple of caveats here. We also seen a few tools going after kind of the shortcomings of models, trying to fix them. That's not a good idea. These models are getting better so fast, every single, not years, like pretty much every month, that many of these companies end up building obsolete products. Another thing here, like a lot of these founders are developers and they think about like developer ideas. A lot of these are actually obvious, like monitoring. Of course, everyone wants to monitor what their AI is doing, which means that these ideas become very, very competitive. The space is very crowded, while the market is still nascent. So it's very difficult to differentiate with such ideas. And finally, we have the application layer. We funded so many companies here that I couldn't put them on the slide. Like there are like hundreds of companies being built every year. What's interesting here is that models are becoming so affordable, so commoditized, that the application layer is where I think there is the most value to create for a young founding team. Having that direct connection with the end customer, being at the core of the UX, is a huge advantage for them. And that led us to see AI application startup growing so much faster than ever before. You know, when I was a founder, the very top percentile, the best startup, were growing from 0 to 1 million ARR in 12 months. These best companies today are growing from 0 to 10 million ARR in just 12 months. We've seen a few of these this year. It's completely mind-blowing for us. One of the reasons is actually that enterprises are eager to use AI. A decade ago, when it was about moving to the cloud, they were slowing down. They were going very slowly, like in these transformations. Today, they want more AI. Every day they want more, which means that some of the startups are able to sell huge six-figure deals to these companies while being a team of founders, super small. And that's also something we didn't see before. Which leads me to think that every single software company is today at risk of being disrupted by one of these startups. AI today helps them building software faster, making it better, but it's also starting to be able to perform tasks that were traditionally only being done by humans. And I'm thinking in particular about calling people. That's the biggest trend I've seen in 2024, voice AI. I shared before, 22% of the fall batch were all working on voice. What happened is that we are out of the uncanny valley, at least for English. People are now comfortable speaking with an AI agent. And that was actually kind of crazy. I remember a year ago when I started to work with EPFL, that's basically building an AI interviewer. I was blown away by the experience. It felt so natural. I didn't see it coming so fast. That was a year ago. Today, it feels so natural. Today, I prefer to call an AI than a human agent. The AI is going to be available 24/7. It's not going to be mad at me. It's going to have all the context in the world. My experience will be much better. And that's one of the reasons we've seen so many successful companies using voice as the medium, replacing basically any function where you traditionally would call someone in a call center. I put a few as examples here from my prior in recruiting, but you also have like Salient, for example, in debt collection. Just imagine like these people in call centers calling just random people just to collect debt. AI can do that much better. Quick prediction here. I do think that most call centers around the planet are going to close, are going to disappear in the next 2 years. Maybe before concluding that presentation, let me share with you a few observations and predictions. Another thing we've observed is that startups spend a lot less time stuck in pivot hell. We've traditionally about a third of startups we fund are going to pivot before the end of the batch. This pivot hell means that startups are going from idea to idea to idea, not finding something that works. This time, searching for an idea has shrinked a lot. AI has made a lot of ideas that would be simply impossible to work on like a year ago are now possible. Another surprise, like traditionally the code that people are actually creating is the most valuable IP. Well, today things are changing. The code is not that complex to write anymore. What's becoming more important is actually the test data that's going to ensure you're actually going to build prompts that deliver the right result. And building a very high-quality test data is becoming as valuable, if not more, than your actual code. Startups are moving so much faster. It's incredible. Like when we just surveyed a batch, I think last summer, we just asked them what tools they were using. 100% every single startups were using some codegen tool, mostly Cursor. They are 10x, 100x more efficient, more productive than we were 10 years ago when we were building our own startup. They also can update the software continuously. We see them rewrite their software like pretty much every month, leveraging new models, new technologies that were made available. Just imagine now, maybe some of you, all the traditional players in the field, how fast can they react? It's going to take 6 months to get permission to use some model. A startup is just going to try it day one and use it if it improves their software. Other quick predictions here. We think that vertical AI is actually going to be 10x bigger in the future than SaaS ever was. And the main reason here is that AI can not only replace software, of course, but it can also replace humans. A lot of good things here. Of course, some society changes too that we'll have to confront. Reasoning model, we just spoke quickly about O1, O3, R1. Not obviously, but I think that 2025 is going to be the year of reasoning models. Surprisingly, O1 adoption has not been that fast yet. My guess here is that most current use cases are expecting models to be real-time, to answer right away to any questions. However, these reasoning models are going to change that space by enabling new use cases where the real-time aspect doesn't matter. Think, for example, about legal. Legal software today as a market is maybe a few billion. Legal services just in the US is 400 billion a year. How much of that can be leveraged, can be improved or replaced by AI? Probably a good portion. Consumer startups, that's an increasing trend. AI is leveling the playing field. That's enabling small startups now to build things that were unimaginable before and possibly compete with some of the big consumer players. I'm actually pretty excited to see what's going to be coming next here. Home robots are going to be everywhere very soon. By very soon, I'm not thinking this year, but like in a couple of years, maybe a few more, but not that much more. Today, I think that the hardware is ready. The models are not yet. And probably one of the big limitations here has been the availability of training data. Things are changing. We've already funded quite a few companies working on this. And maybe to conclude, intelligence is going to become a commodity. Just imagine a world where all of us, everyone, has constant access to smart, expert agents that are always available for us. How much creativity is it going to unleash? I think today is the best time ever to create a company. And I hope if some of you do, I will work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas. We will be getting some chairs, but thank you already for this reality check. And I think it's really important also that you highlight the speed and just the profound transformation that is about to happen, because I think a lot of people are not aware, right? I think probably people in this room are more aware than your average crowd, but I think it's still extremely good to have this reminder. So there would be too many questions to ask, and again, I recommend people also to use Slido. But one that I have is, now that you see this amazing opportunity, you're of course also looking for the founders to execute on that. What are you looking for in founders advice that separates the good from the bad?
The first thing is that to us, founders are actually more important than their ideas. Like YC is probably one of the only places in the world where we sometimes fund people despite their idea. Like we've funded so many people pivoting to better ideas. That kind of explains why. Founders, we want them to be first builders. We have a clear bias towards technical founders because we want the founding team, to be able to build their own product. And often it's software. Sometimes if you are building a robot, of course, it can be something else, or like in healthcare. But because of the pace of iterations they need to be able to achieve, they need to be able to build themselves, not hire some engineers. And maybe another characteristic, they need to be determined. We need to see that in themselves. I mean, building a startup is probably one of the most challenging jobs ever. Probably the most rewarding too, but it's so challenging that we want them to really want it. And so that's what we try to see in our application process.
Motivation and grit. And so you said, you see most of the business at the moment in B2B, and consumer is just starting.
Yes.
Why is that? Is that related to the unit economics of model access, or are there any other reasons why that's been?
Yes,
slow?
I think part of that. I think that's what I was saying when I mentioned the leveling the playing field. Historically, if you want to create a new social network, well, good luck. Like the market is already locked here. Very, very difficult to fight and get good distribution. But AI enables new startups to innovate, to do things that were simply not possible before. And of course, the lowering cost of models also makes that possible at scale. So yes, I think we're going to see new projects all over once all of this creativity is going to be unleashed.
So I just also, because we don't have a lot of time, I really want to take questions from the audience. You also will be here, and I know you're meeting with a lot of startups, which is great. So closing enterprise deals with 10 employees or less sounds pretty risky. Risky from the perspective of the large enterprise, right? Because we hear that often, of course, from the startups here. They say, look, we have product, but nobody wants to work with us because they think we might be dead, right, in 12 months.
It does happen, let's be clear. It's not easy. That said, I took some examples. I know Salient, I use as an example, is doing debt collection in the car industry. They already are working with banks. And like from very early on, I think one of their first deal was a big bank. And what happens here is that the product they deliver provides so much value that it would be silly for banks or for big enterprises not to use it. Because they can, just imagine, in that case, it's debt collection. This AI basically performs better for much cheaper.
All right.
They can try, they get the result, and then, of course, they are eager to become customers.
Very popular question. What field is lacking behind regarding AI startups and could benefit the most from AI? Where would you like to see more?
I think there is like an infinity of space. Like I don't think there is anyone that could not benefit from AI in a way.
But are you seeing some that are not getting the necessary attention?
I'm biased because I'm mostly seeing the ones who get the attention. So I'm mostly thinking about these ones. But every day we see new ones, and it's surprising. Like we had a company, I forgot the name, that were in pivot hell, and the founder's mother was a dentist. He ended up spending one day at her practice and seeing how crazy it was, how cumbersome it was to basically do all the process of claims, like getting reimbursement and so on, and thought, oh, AI can do that better.
Yeah.
And here he was, new company that today is super successful.
Yeah, great. So there's a geo-economic question. So, right, if you think about Swiss startup or European startup founders, how can they be competitive with US startups? Like, what do you recommend to them? If you meet a European founder, say just go to
just
the
move
US
to
and become
SF. Sorry, but probably not what you
No, but
wanted
you
to
have
hear.
to be honest here, right?
Yeah, the honest answer is that, I mean, I would encourage you, especially if you're in the application space, just to move to San Francisco, because that's where everything is happening. Let's be clear, it's more competitive. You have so many companies over there fighting for talents, fighting among themselves, but it's also where you can reach the best, like the biggest potential you could ever have with your company.
Yeah.
You are going to learn every day. I mean, it's kind of like the local industry.
Yeah.
You go to any coffee shop, you are going to be surrounded by founders.
Yeah.
And that's not only inspiring for you,
Yeah.
you are going to go way beyond, and you
Yeah.
can learn from them, learn from your peers.
Yeah.
There is no better teachers than your peers.
Yeah. I think I totally get that this is advice. As a European, do you sometimes worry what this will do to Europe if all the good people go there and potentially don't go back, or do you think, well, I mean, from a business perspective, right? This should obviously not influence your decision, but I'm just asking, right? 2 steps removed, what's your thinking there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm French, my accent tells. I did relocate to the US, but actually when we built Algolia, like the biggest team in the company is based in Paris.
Based in Paris.
And I'm super excited when I see Mistral, for example, being based in Paris. That's super exciting for me. Now, if I'm meeting with young founders and they ask me the question, I have to be honest. I think they have like a more likelihood to be successful in SF. That doesn't mean that I'm not routing for really for Europe and like having more good AI ecosystems or startup ecosystems in Europe, of course.
So you mentioned this intelligence becoming a commodity. There's a question, but if you can elaborate on that, I mean, it just becomes a sort of plug and play type asset.
Yeah, the question is also, does it mean a decline in human intelligence? Actually, it's the exact opposite. It's like kind of any technology revolution. When we got the printing press, like people thought that humans were going to become dumb because they didn't have to memorize anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of revolution here. It's just going to open up new capabilities in us. And I'm more excited about what we're going to do with these new capabilities than anything else. So I think this available intelligence kind of in the form of like these agents that are going to be able to all of us is going to be incredible. Even in education, like our kids are not going to learn the same way.
Yeah.
They'll have like personalized tutors available 24/7.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible. I don't know. Like I think that the next generations of people are going to be so much smarter than us.
So much smarter than us, yeah. So actually, I want to jump here a question because this is kind of the same theme where Hinton famously predicted we won't need radiologists. Demand has increased.
Yeah, I don't know about the radiologist. I would today trust an AI more than a radiologist. Of course, we still need the radiologist to interpret and be the interface, but I would trust a radiologist leveraging AI so much more than someone who doesn't.
Exactly.
And I think there are like some studies out there that shows the difference. Now, will we always still have radiologists? Yes, but not as many.
Yeah. And of course, there's always the question like, what is actually a job and how many tasks? And I think the reason why the phone operators are out of business is because they really only have one task, which is to answer this phone. Yeah, the call center, and that will be replaced, and there's nothing that you add.
I mean, it's going to be that's what frightens me the most. Probably it's the speed at which everything is going to change, and it's already changing. Today, call centers closing in faraway countries. You may not realize what's going on here from here, but in a few years, it's going to be our jobs. And yeah, like I think, like every revolution, technology revolutions, things are going to adapt. We are going to adapt. Everything is going to be okay.
Yeah.
But what about the transition? Because usually we have generations of people in between.
Exactly.
Now it's the same
The sort
people
of
who need to,
exactly.
to still
Within
to adapt.
generations.
Yes, within the generations.
Well, I see many questions, and frankly, each of those would be the topic of an evening sort of discussion. So sorry, we have 20 seconds. I'm going to choose one. What was the biggest surprise of the last batch that you saw?
Biggest surprise of last batch, probably that kind of crazy growth of some companies. You know, when we did YC, the aspiration was to grow 10% a week. Like that's kind of like was the mantra. Let's grow 10% a week. Only a very few startups were able to do that.
Yeah.
Last batch, that was the average across startups,
Wow.
10% a week. That was the average growth across all the startups of the batch, which was for people who went through YC 10 years ago, kind of insane.
Is there still the same motto? Build, talk to users, build things.
That's basically what you should do as founders. There is only two things to do: like talk to your users and build a product.
Excellent. Well, Nicolas, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
This was
Marcel.
super insightful. Thank you.